Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Star Wars Stuff Podcast. My name is David, and this is where we talk all things Star Wars. I had some other stuff planned for tonight to talk to you guys about, but big news dropped. Not quite sure if you've heard. Didn't really go over my socials like other news usually does. I don't know, but before we get to that, I do want to recognize all of our top tier Patreon supporters out there. Darth Ace 1, Liam McCallan, Chris Simpson, Kevin Leininger, Deb McCaffrey, Drew Peters, Zach Netzel, Maya Morris, Maka Tautala, Adam Haber, Brad Mackey, Front Row King, and Darth Beard. Thank you so much for your awesome love and support out there. Also, we do want to talk about LegionSabers.com. If you were looking to buy a new lightsaber, new high-end lightsaber, use the code STUFF at checkout for 15% off. And if you spend over $300, you get a free lightsaber. So, the big news. I didn't find out about this news until maybe a few hours ago. There's another Star Wars creator out there talking about it, and I thought it was just kind of like a rumor. They said it was official, and then I saw something on Instagram that said source Variety. So I was like, oh, yeah, that is pretty official if it comes from Variety. And I definitely want to hear from you out there. If you can comment what your thoughts about the news are, let us know. I want to talk about it. It's just me tonight, so I do want to see what you guys think about this news. I know there's at least one person in here looking at us live. But yeah, we're streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Right now, our Instagram is changing over to something new and exciting, and we're going to let you all know pretty soon about it. Sooner than I think. But yeah, the big news is that December 2026 film has gone away, apparently. And the source is a very credible source. It's from Variety, and it's also on Hollywood Reporter. So let's go to this Variety article. We're going to go over it here. So the article states, Disney removes Star Wars movie from 2026 slate, replaced by Ice Age 6. Ugh. That really stings there. I mean, we've been waiting for these movies for so long, and presumably this was going to be the Rey film. It's gone back and forth so many times. Is Rey going to be starring in this film? Is she going to be in there for a few minutes? Is she going to be the Obi-Wan kind of mentor to the new cast? Is this going to be Episode X, which would be Episode 10? What are we going to get? What we're going to get? But apparently it's not going to happen. And of course, we did learn that the screenwriter Stephen Knight, he left the project. He had difficulty with it. He just couldn't get it done, and it echoes so much of the Michael Arndt experience with The Force Awakens. Kathleen Kennedy knew ahead of time that he takes years and years and years to develop a script, and he's an award-winning screenwriter. Michael Arndt is, and he had to go because he was just taking too long. And then, of course, Kasdan and JJ took over The Force Awakens. And Stephen Knight leaving this kind of really smells of that. And that's kind of what the environment, I think, is at Star Wars. I mean, Star Wars is under the Disney umbrella, and Disney has to hit certain promises and landmarks, especially to shareholders. They have to make money on these movies. And Star Wars is a great franchise to make money off of. You just got to do the right project, in my opinion. But back to the article here. Variety: Disney removes Star Wars movie from 2026 slate, and it's replaced by Ice Age 6, which is not a headline I thought I'd be reading. Disney has removed an entitled Star Wars film previously scheduled for December 18, 2026 from its release calendar. Ice Age 6 will move into its spot. While it has never been confirmed exactly what this project would be, Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy was previously announced as the director of an upcoming Star Wars film following Daisy Ridley's Rey after the events of 2019 Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. The film lost screenwriter Stephen Knight earlier this year, like I mentioned, after Damon Lindelof and Justin Britt Gibson previously departed the project. Totally forgot about those guys. Those guys wanted to do a certain thing, and they got booted, essentially. Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy said at last year's Star Wars Celebration that Ridley's new film would follow Rey as she builds a new Jedi Order, which is kind of exciting. It wouldn't be the first time a potential entry in the beloved space opera franchise ended before it began. New installments from director Patty Jenkins, Marvel producer Kevin Feige, The Last Jedi director Rian Johnson, and Game of Thrones creators David Benioff and D.B. Weiss have been announced over the years, but none ever came to fruition. The next Star Wars movie, The Mandalorian Grogu, from director Jon Favreau, is scheduled to premiere in May 2026, which is on track to release on that date in May. Which also gives me pause because there's another big Marvel movie coming out in May. We've been there before with Solo and Infinity War, which you would think they would avoid that, but that's happening. Elsewhere in the galaxy far, far away, Lucasfilm revealed last week that X-Men alum Simon Kinberg would write and produce a new trilogy with Kennedy. Last week, Disney and 20th Century Animation announced that Ice Age 6 was in production with the series stars Ray Romano, John Leguizamo, who's been in Star Wars, as Gor Koresh in The Mandalorian Season 2, Episode 1, Queen Latifah, Dennis Leary, and Simon Pegg, who was also in Star Wars, he was... If you give me a second, I can conjure the name. Unkar Plutt. Yeah, that's the name. Returning to lend their voices to the film. So, very disappointing news. I think there's some people out there that will say, I told you so. I knew this was going to happen. And the writing was on the wall. You could read the tea leaves, what have you. It's depressing. It's really depressing. It's kind of one of those moments when the money and the time that Disney Lucasfilm has had to come up with multiple movies, that this is now the situation that we're in. I do like the character of Rey. I think there's a lot you could do with her, but I think everyone's seen that report out there that Rey is the most valuable on-screen asset that Disney has, that Star Wars has. Disney Star Wars. Don't know if I really agree with that per se. I like to see what some of you out there in chat kind of think about this situation, because there's so many different things. We talk about it all the time on the podcast. You can do Old Republic, Knights of the Old Republic, Darth Revan stuff, Darth Bane stuff, the Jedi and Sith wars. So you can see multiple Sith on screen for the first time ever. You could do a young Palpatine Plagueis relationship thing that they were kind of hinting at in the Acolyte at the very end. There's so many other things. I think they could just make $1 billion right away and just give it to us, and they'd make a ton of money, and they could maybe do these other side projects. They've really established Daisy Ridley as Rey, but I think people would be okay if you gave us a Knights of the Old Republic, if you went back in time. And of course, there's that big timeline that they debuted out there in London, and it does say Old Republic on it. And it's like, why don't they just give us that? We've been clamoring for that for a long time. And I think there's a lot of young, rabid creators out there that are Star Wars fans that you could kind of give them the reins. Now, I was thinking about this today, and we've always talked about the simple fact that all these big-time directors want to stay away from Star Wars. Because they knew. This was even before The Last Jedi. They knew that if you don't, to put it simply, satisfy the fans, there's going to be hell to pay. And I think Rian Johnson took a lot of brunt, but I think he actually was kind of unscathed in a way. I think he was ready to do the trilogy thing, but then of course he got a lot of money from Netflix to do Knives Out. But a lot of directors don't want to take that risk in their career. Now, the director, I think, pops to everyone's mind, and it sounds almost ludicrous to think about this director doing Star Wars, but we live in a time where we've seen different things that we've never seen, that we never thought we'd ever get on screen, and outcomes that I don't think we ever thought we would get from the movies. I like to think back to, I know this isn't Star Wars, but think about the third Spider-Man in the Homecoming trilogy. I mean, we got to see, I guess, spoilers for No Way Home if you haven't seen that, but we got the three Spider-Men on screen somehow, some way. And the same with canon. I mean, it feels like Disney Star Wars is Lucasfilm is just worried that it'll confuse fans. I don't think it will. We talked about this many times, James and I. All you have to do is show a timeline before the movie starts, before the TV show starts, to put people in the right headspace. And if it's outside of canon, just market it that way. Say, this is totally outside of canon. We're just having fun. I think people come to Star Wars to have fun. And one of the more fun things I think they could do is The Force Unleashed. And Sam Witwer's still young enough. Hayden's still young enough. Hayden's totally game. He does all these conventions now. He was just here in San Antonio. And there's tons of stuff they can do. It really puzzles me. I mean, it's been since 2019. It'll be, 6 years since we've had a Star Wars movie when the next movie comes out, The Mandalorian Grogu. And it's very puzzling. It's like, what's going on? It's like, what's the bottleneck? I work in IT, so, or I used to work in IT. I'm still technical, but it's like there's something in the way here. What's the thing that's in the way? And I know a lot of people will point to a certain person, but I don't think you can just blame the person at the top. I think this is also on the people right underneath her as well. I mean, I kind of want to call out Dave Filoni here a little bit, because it's like he could step in, and I mean, he's one of the creative directors now. He's all the way at the top of creative, and it's like, what's his thought process? Does he not want to rock the boat? Is he just solely concentrated on his stuff? It's very strange. I loved it when John Knoll had to get a meeting, which sounds ludicrous. That John Knoll can't just walk into Kathleen Kennedy's office and be like, "Hey," and just talk for a second. But of course, yeah, you have to have like a formal meeting and everything. But just the thought of that, like John Knoll has to set up a meeting for your schedule. Which, yeah. I love the fact that Kathleen Kennedy greenlit that story, and it was such a great idea. They did make a couple of mistakes that they're trying to like kind of course correct for the feature films, with the opening crawl being removed, the fanfare, all that. But that story was so great, and it's aged so well. And it's so beloved by so many people now. I mean, branch off of that. And they have with Andor, but Tony Gilroy has really taken charge. And I had a conversation with someone at a high-ranking person, which is, to put it mildly, I couldn't believe I met this person. Just randomly. But of course, there's a lot of people there that we actually met randomly, that we've talked about that on other podcasts. But I recognize this person, and I asked them about Star Wars. And this person was like, we started talking about Andor and the whole Tony Gilroy situation. It was kind of a conversation with, I asked him what his opinion on Acolyte was, and brought up Andor, and he basically told me that Tony Gilroy will essentially get notes and recommendations and be led to certain, I guess, narrative landmarks, so to speak. And he just doesn't do them. He just does his own thing. And essentially he can't be pushed around, and he's kind of doing his own thing. And of course it worked in season 1. And of course, season 2 had to happen because it was kind of a 2-season deal. But it's going to be sad to see Tony Gilroy leave Star Wars, if indeed he does. there's kind of that running joke of doing a Rogue 2. And then, of course, people say, of course, that's A New Hope. But the Rogue 2 I'm thinking of is when the Bothans got the plans for the second Death Star. And then we can bring back Mon Mothma and you get Admiral Akbar, which would be incredible. Maybe spend some time on that Mon Cal ship. But I mean, there's so many different things. There's so many different things they can do. And they're just kind of stuck in the Daisy Ridley business here, it appears. But, I mean, does it make sense to you guys to have 2 Star Wars movies, one in May and one in December? Wouldn't you think you would kind of start off with like a surefire hit like The Mandalorian Grogu and then let that kind of marinate a bit and maybe not have it in May where there's another huge Marvel film that really kind of makes you think of it was 2019 when Solo dropped and Deadpool 2 dropped, and which is another interesting story. And Rob Liefeld's talked about that online, why Deadpool 2 dropped in May. It was kind of a reaction to Disney buying Fox, and the Fox people didn't like it. That's what he said. I don't know. I'm just repeating what he said. And then they kind of did that to upend Disney and cause kind of chaos at the box office, which they did. So, but it's weird. I mean, dropping a movie in May, then dropping a movie in December. And of course, Avatar has a lot to do with that as well, because they got to drop every other year. And the second Avatar movie was great. I loved it. I haven't seen it again, but I think I saw it twice in the theater. But it is really good. It touches on family. And it's James Cameron's Star Wars, essentially. But going back to the point I was trying to make, we live in a time where anything is possible. And I got the urge the other day to watch some Oppenheimer stuff. And I'm one of these people that go on YouTube and just go in a rabbit hole and watch BTS and award show stuff. And I think a lot of you have seen this, where Christopher Nolan has like a sit down on like a couch with an interviewer, maybe a podcaster. I don't know who he is, but they do like a rapid fire, and some of the questions were he was just supposed to answer yes or no, and of course he used other answers. But he was asked, "Would you ever do TV?" He said no, right away, without hesitation. Is it okay if people watch Oppenheimer on a mobile device? He said yes, right away. And then there were some questions where he said maybe. And then the interviewer got to a question where he asked, would you ever do a Star Wars film? And right away he said, I believe he said, I don't want to talk about that, which isn't a yes, isn't a no, but I mean, he is a child of Star Wars. There's this really great university interview where Christopher Nolan was the interviewer and George Lucas was the interviewee. And it's a fascinating watch and listen. If you just YouTube it, you can watch a piece of it. The very end of it is hilarious, man. There's something said at the end. A question was asked to George Lucas, and then Christopher Nolan like completed George Lucas's thought, and like it's hilarious, like the delivery he gives. But Christopher Nolan, man, give that guy whatever money he wants and tell him, give us a Star Wars. And I'm pretty sure he has thought about a story. A story has been like bouncing around in his mind for years, probably. And of course, he doesn't want any studio interference. He's going to have to be kind of like a Tony Gilroy, in that he's going to have to be left alone And of course, it'll be shot on film. It'll be shot on IMAX. But it would be an interesting thing to see a Christopher Nolan film. And I know it might sound ridiculous, but I mean, it's to the point, guys, where it's like, I mean, we got to bring in big directors here, people that we know will do great things, because we're stuck in this weird state. It's like, I don't know, and I've never met Simon Kinberg, but all of his stuff is either really, really good, or really good, or really, really bad. So I'm really not confident in him giving us a trilogy. I want to say at this point, it's like, let Christopher Nolan do whatever he wants to do. I mean, this is Star Wars, guys. I mean, come on. This is the franchise that should be cleaning up at the box office. There's so many different things that they can do that it's going to be a surefire hit. And here we are, where they remove a movie replaced by Ice Age 6. And of course, there's rumors out there that Simon Kinberg is possibly doing a Rey trilogy too, which could be a reaction, or could be kind of I guess you could say the reaction to Stephen Knight leaving this project and then doing the Rey stuff years from now. Because it looks like 2026 will be Mandalorian Grogu's year at the box office, and then the year after that will be James Mangold's film, which is The Dawn of the Jedi. And we've talked about that too. I mean, you think Dawn of the Jedi, it's like, there's not going to be lightsabers, right? There's not going to be, what kind of technology is there going to be? I mean, are we going to go back to, I mean, what's the technology going to look like? What are the ships going to be? I mean, there's so many questions. It's so ponderous, you know? It's like, well, what's the tone going to be? They hinted at it being biblical and thinking about Ben-Hur and the Ten Commandments and all that. But I mean, if I put my president of Lucasfilm hat on, I mean, it's going to have to be a spectacular pitch. James Mangold is a phenomenal director. He is really, really good. And he worked with Simon Kinberg actually on Logan. But that doesn't really entice me. I mean, that's not there's so many other things I would want to make before that. You know? I mean, there's so many other things I'd want to touch on before I go there. I mean, that feels very art house to me. And it's like, we don't, in a way, you know? I mean, it does feel biblical and feels like desert. It feels like maybe this person, I mean, I'm kind of reciting what like the Ten Commandments is and Ben-Hur is, but like slave in the desert and discovers the Force, and it's like, how entertaining can that be? I just kind of wonder about that too. I don't know. It's getting to the point where it's really kind of frustrating here. And I'm getting old. I want to see a lot of this stuff before I go. So, I mean, we're waiting a long time here, guys. I mean, 6 years between movies. It's kind of wild. We have been given a lot of Disney Plus TV shows. I threw on The Mandalorian season 2 the other day, and it's just so great. It's just so great. If this was the time before the internet and we had that, I know it wouldn't be possible with Disney Plus without the internet. But if I was back at school, I'd be talking to all my friends about it. We'd all be talking about it. We'd all be getting the action figures. We'd all be just freaking out over a great Star Wars TV show. And it's just one of those things you can't believe exists. Well, for me, at least, having a cinematic quality TV show. And now, of course, we're going to get the movie, which to me, that feels like that came in late. I mean, I know most of us listening, watching, aren't behind the scenes and don't know the financial aspect and the planning aspect to all this. But man, it seems like they just don't make the most logical, commonsensical moves when it comes to Star Wars. Even with Celebration too. Celebration's great. You make a lot of friends. Colin became my friend. James became my friend. Craig. Friendships that'll last a lifetime. But it's in spite of stuff that happens at Celebration. The whole Reed Pop management of it. Now with the lottery system. So we will see what exactly takes place and what kind of aftermath we get, because the story just broke today, guys. So I have no other information on this other than what seems to have been the Daisy Ridley movie is now just gone from 2026, which makes a lot of sense. But did they pivot into a trilogy, which I know has a lot of people freaked out, but we shall see. So yeah, that is pretty much it I wanted to talk about. Don't forget to leave your comments on YouTube if you're watching us there. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't. If you're watching us on Facebook, on our Facebook page, leave a comment on what you think. Is this good, bad? Also on X, otherwise known as Twitter. Leave a comment there, and we'll talk about it in the next stream. But yeah, I just wanted to see what everyone out there was thinking, and I just kind of wanted to talk about it. And we're living in a weird time right now for Star Wars, and I don't really think we should be. I guess that kind of sums up what I think. But like I said before, at the beginning of the podcast, if you're looking to buy your next lightsaber, go to LegionSabers.com. Use the code STUFF at checkout for 50% off. And you can get a free lightsaber if you spend over $300. Don't forget to comment, like, subscribe on YouTube. You can find us at Star Wars Stuff Pod on Instagram, at Stuff Pod on Twitter, on Threads, Star Wars Stuff Podcast. We are also on TikTok. We also have an email that you can email the show, starwarstuffpodcast@gmail.com. And of course, we're also on Facebook and we stream on our page. So let me know what you're thinking. And we will probably podcast tomorrow night during prime time. Maybe get Colin and Zach's opinion. The last podcast the three of us did, we had some audio issues, and we think we figured them out. And I haven't put that podcast on Patreon yet, but I think I'm going to do that tonight, possibly. But yeah, other than that, this is the breaking news right now. I'll probably have more people to talk to about this, hopefully tomorrow or Tuesday. And good night, and may the Force be with you. Always.